The galaxy had long dismissed humanity as an insignificant backwater species. The Galactic Union, a vast coalition of advanced civilizations, barely acknowledged Earth's existence. It was a planet of primitives, they said, technologically stunted, politically fractured, and militarily irrelevant. Then came the Titan. It appeared on the fringes of Union-controlled space, a monstrosity of steel and fire, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Towering over even the largest warships of the Jirva Armada, the Titan radiated an aura of raw, unbridled power. Its hull, forged from unknown alloys, absorbed sensor scans without revealing its secrets. Its weapons, silent and ominous, pulsed with an energy signature that defied classification. The moment it emerged, every major power in the Union froze in fear. Admiral Gotar of the Zeltar Dominion was the first to speak during the emergency council meeting. His holographic form flickered above the circular table, his scales bristling with unease. "This is an act of war," he growled. "Humans were not supposed to have this kind of technology. They were barely capable of interstellar travel a century ago." A chorus of agreement followed. The Vranex hegemony, the Ultari Confederation, even the once neutral Keri diplomatic collective. All of them murmured their anxieties through their respective representatives. The Union's Supreme Chancellor, a composed but visibly shaken Rilverian named Orothtai, raised a tendril to silence the room. "We do not yet know their intentions," he said. "We must determine if this Titan is here for peace or conquest." A cold silence followed. Because deep down, they all knew the truth. Humanity wasn't here to talk. Humanity had come to make a statement, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Titan did not broadcast a message. It did not send a diplomatic envoy. It simply drifted through the void like a silent predator, its engines humming with a power that dwarfed even the most advanced Union warships. From the bridge of his command vessel, Admiral Gotar watched with a mix of disbelief and dread. The Zeltar Dominion prided itself on its military prowess, boasting fleets that had crushed entire civilizations under their rule. Yet, in all his centuries of service, he had never seen a ship like this. "Status report," he barked. His sensors officer, a jittery young Zeltar, swallowed nervously before responding. "Admiral, we have scanned the Titan multiple times, but our readings remain inconclusive. Their armor is absorbing most of our scans. What little we can detect suggests extreme energy output." "How extreme?" The officer hesitated. "At least 10 times the power levels of our Dreadnought-class warships, possibly more." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. That was impossible. The Galactic Union's most powerful warships, built over millennia of technological advancement, operated within a known range of energy output. The Titan shattered those limits. Gotar clenched his claws. "Are their weapons active?" "No detectable charge, Admiral, but their armament is—" The officer hesitated again, glancing at his console as if he couldn't believe what he was reading. "Spit it out, officer. Their weapons are unidentified. Some appear to be railguns, mass drivers of a scale we've never seen. Others give off energy signatures we can't categorize. But there's one in particular, mounted along the ship's spine. It's putting out enough residual power to match an entire fleet's main batteries combined." Gotar's blood ran cold. A single weapon with the firepower of an armada? That was not just a warship. That was an extinction-level threat. "Open a channel to the Galactic Union High Command," he ordered. "Tell them we may be dealing with the most dangerous species in the galaxy." On the other side of the Union, in the grand chambers of the Supreme Council, the galactic leaders argued in panic. "We must send a fleet," one delegate roared. "We must show these humans that they cannot intimidate us." "And risk war?" another countered. "We do not even know if they intend to fight." Oroth Tai, the Supreme Chancellor, sat motionless, his luminous blue eyes staring at the live feed of the Titan. Every instinct in his ancient body screamed at him. This was no bluff. The humans had sent this ship to be seen. It was a message, a warning. But the warning wasn't for the Union's leadership. It was for the entire galaxy. "Contact the human government," Oroth Tai finally spoke. "We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." The chamber fell silent. No one dared oppose him. Moments later, a transmission was sent. For hours, there was no reply. And then, when the galaxy least expected it, the humans answered. A single transmission. Just 5 words. Cold. Simple. Unnerving. "We are done being ignored." The words echoed across the Galactic Union like a war drum. We are done being ignored. The Supreme Council chamber fell into dead silence. The holographic display of the Titan still hovered in the air, a grim reminder that humanity was no longer a mere footnote in galactic affairs. Every leader present understood the weight of those words. Admiral Gotar, still linked to the meeting through his command ship's secure channel, was the first to break the silence. "We cannot afford to let this escalate. If the humans possess even half the power that Ship suggests, an armed conflict could—" "Could what, Admiral?" interrupted High Warlord Varak of the Vranek's hegemony, his thick, furred frame leaning forward aggressively. "Cost us a few planets, a few fleets. The Union has crushed rebellions before. What makes these humans any different?" Oroth Tai exhaled slowly, his tendrils curling in irritation. "Perhaps the fact that they built a warship in complete secrecy, one that rivals anything we've ever seen." The chamber filled with murmurs. That was the true horror of it. The Union's intelligence networks stretched across thousands of worlds, embedded in every major species. They should have known if a new power was rising. But they hadn't. Somehow, humanity had hidden this. And if they had hidden one warship, how many more did they have? Aboard the Titan captain, Elias Mercer stood at the bridge of the first human warship ever to enter galactic space. The stars stretched before him like an endless ocean, but it wasn't the void that held his attention. It was the countless Union warships, forming a blockade in the distance. His officers waited in tense silence. "Any response?" Mercer asked. "Union fleet is maintaining formation," Lieutenant Rourke replied. "No aggressive maneuvers yet, but they're definitely afraid of us." Mercer allowed himself a small smile. "They should be afraid. Decades of being dismissed, of being underestimated, of being treated like lesser beings. Those days were over. Humanity had always been seen as weak, primitive, behind the curve. The Union had dictated trade agreements that bled Earth dry, had denied humanity a seat at the table, had laughed when they protested. So humanity did what it did best. They adapted, they innovated, and in the dark, they prepared. The Titan was the culmination of that preparation. A warship designed in secrecy, built in underground shipyards on Mars, using technology that not even the Union's most paranoid intelligence agencies had detected. Every component had been engineered with one purpose: to show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. "Open a channel to the Union fleet," Mercer ordered. A second later, the comms officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Mercer stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "This is Captain Elias Mercer of the Titan. We are not here to negotiate. We are not here to beg for recognition. You will no longer ignore humanity. If you wish for peace, step aside and let us pass. If you wish for war, we will show you just how much you've underestimated us." The channel cut. The bridge was silent. Then, after a long pause, the Union fleet responded. They parted. The Union fleet, once a wall of defiance, now split down the middle like a tide parting before a storm. The Titan moved forward, slow and deliberate, passing through the gap with the quiet confidence of a predator among prey. On the bridge, Captain Mercer remained impassive, but he could feel the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders. The galaxy had ignored humanity for too long. Now, they had no choice but to watch. "Status?" he asked. Lieutenant Rourke studied her console. "Union ships are holding position. No signs of pursuit or aggression." Mercer exhaled. It was exactly as he had hoped. The Union wasn't ready for war. "Good. Maintain course for the Galactic Council Station." At the heart of Union-controlled space, the massive station known as Valara Prime served as the seat of power for the galaxy. It was a place where empires gathered, where politics dictated the fates of entire species. For centuries, humanity had been denied a voice there. That changed today. Galactic Council Chambers, Valara Prime. The council chamber was chaos. Leaders shouted over one another, voices raised in a mixture of fear, anger, and disbelief. "They have breached our space!" a Carey diplomat hissed, his tendrils twitching with nervous energy. "We should have stopped them when we had the chance." "And risk open war?" snapped an Oltari representative. "That ship could have wiped out half our fleet. We must understand their demands before we act." Supreme Chancellor Oroth Tai watched the debate unfold in silence. The Titan was en route. They had mere hours before humanity arrived at the Council's doorstep. He turned to his aide. "Are we prepared to receive them?" The aide hesitated. "We have security forces ready, but do you truly intend to allow a human delegation into these halls?" Oroth Tai's eyes narrowed. "They did not ask for permission. They are coming regardless. We will hear them." "Aboard the Titan, approaching Valara Prime," Lieutenant Rourke announced. "Council Station has raised shields, but no sign of defensive actions." Captain Mercer nodded. "They're afraid, but they're smart enough not to start a fight they can't win." A message appeared on the main screen, an official transmission from the Galactic Council, granting permission to dock. Mercer smiled. "Prepare for landing. It's time we had a conversation." The Titan descended toward Valara Prime, a hulking behemoth of steel and fire against the backdrop of the pristine Galactic Council Station. Below, the gathered fleets of the Union stood motionless, their weapons silent, their commanders paralyzed by uncertainty. Humanity had arrived. On the bridge, Captain Mercer watched the station grow larger on the view screen. A part of him relished the fear radiating from the Union, but he knew this was only the beginning. Fear alone would not secure humanity's future. "Lieutenant Rourke, status on docking." "Council has authorized us to land in their central docking bay," Rourke replied. "Shields are still active, but their security forces are waiting for us." Mercer smirked. "Let them wait." The Titan eased into position, its landing struts locking into place with a deep, metallic thud. A moment later, the docking clamps engaged. Humanity was now inside the heart of galactic power. Galactic Council Docking Bay. A thick tension filled the air as Mercer and his delegation stepped onto the docking platform. Behind them, the polished hull of the Titan gleamed under the artificial lights, a silent reminder that humanity no longer played by the Union's rules. Waiting for them was a reception committee, a mix of council dignitaries, military officers, and heavily armed security forces. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. At the front of the group stood Supreme Chancellor Oroth Tai, his blue skin illuminated by the soft glow of Valara Prime's energy fields. "Captain Mercer," Oroth Tai greeted, his voice carefully measured. "Welcome to Valara Prime. I trust your journey was uneventful." Mercer met the Chancellor's gaze, unflinching. "We had no issues. Your fleets were wise enough to stand down. A murmur spread through the gathered officials at his bluntness. The Galactic Union was not accustomed to such directness, especially from humans. Orath Tai studied Mercer for a long moment. "Tell me, Captain, why have you come? What does humanity seek?" Mercer took a step forward, his voice calm but unyielding. Recognition, respect, and most importantly, justice. A ripple of unease spread through the council members. "Justice?" Orath Tai asked, his tendrils twitching in curiosity. "For what exactly?" Mercer's jaw tightened. For centuries, humanity has been dismissed, exploited, and denied a place at the table. We were treated as a lesser species, useful for labor, trade, but never power. That ends today. The room fell silent. "You built that ship in secret," one of the counselors accused. "You violated Union intelligence agreements, hid your technological advancements, and now you arrive in our space demanding justice? This sounds more like a threat." Mercer let the words hang in the air before responding. "It is both." The silence was deafening. Inside the council chambers. Moments later, the human delegation was escorted into the heart of the Galactic Union's political machine. Holographic displays projected live feeds from every major news network across the Union. Every species, every empire was watching. Captain Mercer stood before the assembled leaders of the galaxy, his stance firm, his voice steady. "For too long, humanity has been treated as insignificant. You taxed our colonies, restricted our scientific progress, and denied us entry into your so-called equal union." He scanned the room, letting his words sink in. "And yet while you mocked us, we advanced. While you dismissed us, we prepared." The council members shifted uncomfortably. Orath Tai folded his tendrils. "And now you believe your Titan entitles you to demand power?" Mercer shook his head. "No, Chancellor. The Titan is not a demand. It is proof." "Proof of what?" Mercer's eyes burned with quiet intensity. "Proof that we no longer need your approval." A hush fell over the chamber. Orath Tai sat back, his expression unreadable. "And what happens if we refuse to recognize you? If we continue as we always have?" Mercer smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then we stop asking." The chamber exploded into chaos. The council chamber was a storm of voices, some raised in anger, others in fear. The most powerful leaders in the galaxy, beings who had dictated the fate of entire civilizations for millennia, now found themselves on the defensive. Captain Mercer let the chaos play out. He stood motionless, his gaze cold and unwavering, as the Galactic Union fought over the implications of his words. The message had been received. Humanity was not here to beg. Orath Tai, the Supreme Chancellor, finally raised a hand, silencing the chamber with a sharp motion. His luminous blue eyes studied Mercer carefully. "Let us assume, for a moment, that we recognize humanity as an equal power," he said slowly. "That we grant you a seat on the High Council, acknowledge your technological advancements, and open full membership into the Union." The chamber rumbled with discontent. Several representatives immediately began to protest, but the Chancellor continued, undeterred. "Would that satisfy you, Captain Mercer? Would that satisfy humanity?" Mercer took a deliberate step forward. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence like a blade. "No." Orath Tai's tendrils twitched in surprise. "No?" Mercer's expression darkened. "Recognition is not enough. The damage has already been done. For centuries, humanity has been denied resources, forced into economic servitude, and treated as a minor species. While other empires flourished, we struggled. While you built wonders, we bled for scraps." He turned his gaze to the assembled representatives. his next words like a hammer against stone. You don't get to just undo that with a title. Tension rippled through the chamber. The representative of the Zeltar Dominion, a scaled creature with cruel yellow eyes, leaned forward with a sneer. And what, exactly, do you propose, human? Mercer met his gaze without flinching. Reparations. The room erupted again. Furious shouting filled the chamber, cries of outrage from species that had long benefited from humanity's oppression. Outrageous! Humanity contributed nothing. You are owed nothing. You would blackmail the Union with that warship of yours? Mercer let them rage. He stood unmoving, his expression unreadable. Let them scream. Let them deny. It did not change the truth. Oroth Tai watched him carefully, his expression unreadable. When the room finally quieted, the Chancellor leaned forward. And if we refuse? Mercer's lips curled into a knowing smirk. Then we will take what is owed to us. Dead silence. Mercer took a slow step back, letting his words settle over the room like a death sentence. You have a choice, he continued. Recognize what you've done and make it right, or keep pretending humanity is powerless and suffer the consequences. Oroth Tai exhaled. And if we make the wrong choice? Mercer's expression hardened. Then the Titan will not be the only warship you'll see in your skies. The chamber stood frozen. The unthinkable had happened. Humanity had drawn a line in the sand. And for the first time in the history of the Galactic Union, the great empires of the stars felt a fear they had never known before. The fear of being powerless. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. It stretched across the chamber, wrapping itself around every council member like a noose. For centuries, the Galactic Union had ruled with absolute certainty. They had decided who thrived and who was left behind. No species had ever dared to challenge them so brazenly, and now here stood a human, delivering ultimatums to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Oroth Tai, the Supreme Chancellor, was the first to speak, his voice carefully measured. You claim humanity has been wronged, that we owe you reparations. But tell me, Captain Mercer, what exactly do you think you are owed? Mercer didn't hesitate. Control over our own systems, free trade without Union-imposed sanctions, advanced technology agreements that match those of any major power, and compensation for every stolen resource, every blockade, and every rigged economic treaty you forced upon us. The chamber erupted again. Absurd! You demand privileges you have not earned. This is nothing short of extortion. Mercer simply waited. He knew their outrage wasn't because his demands were impossible. It was because, for the first time, they had no leverage. The Galactic Union had built its power on the assumption that humanity was weak, helpless, too far behind to fight back. But the Titan had shattered that illusion. And the unspoken fear in every council member's eyes told Mercer they knew it. Oroth Tai studied him with an unreadable expression. And if we refuse? Mercer met his gaze, unflinching. Then humanity will act accordingly. We've prepared for this moment. You know nothing of what we've built, of what we truly possess. If the Union wishes to maintain stability, then the time for one-sided exploitation is over. The threat was clear. A Vranek's warlord, his massive frame covered in battle-scarred armor, leaned forward. You claim to be prepared for war, but one warship, even one as advanced as yours, does not win a war against the Union. Mercer smiled coldly. You're assuming we only have one. The chamber fell deathly quiet. The realization dawned on them all at once. If humanity had built one warship in secret, how many more had they created in the shadows? How many fleets were hiding beyond Union surveillance? How many weapons were primed and waiting? For the first time, true uncertainty settled into the council members' expressions. The Galactic Union had always been the master of knowledge, of control, of certainty. But now they weren't sure of anything. Oroth Tai let out a slow breath. You understand that what you are asking will shift the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Mercer's smirk never wavered. That's the point, Chancellor. The Supreme Chancellor leaned back in his seat, his eyes dark with calculation. He knew a war with humanity would not be like any war the Union had fought before. And perhaps, for the first time in history, the Union wouldn't be the ones writing the rules. The Supreme Chancellor sat in silence, his tendrils twitching slightly, a rare tell of unease. Around him, the council chamber still buzzed with murmurs, some outraged, some fearful, but none dismissive. Humanity had always been an afterthought in galactic affairs, a species allowed to exist on the fringes, useful but never influential. That illusion had died the moment the Titan entered Union space. Now the question was no longer if humanity deserved a seat at the table. It was whether the Galactic Union could afford to deny them one. Oroth Tai's voice, when it finally came, was calm but heavy. These demands cannot be decided in a single meeting. We require time to... Mercer cut him off. You've had centuries. A murmur spread through the chamber, whispers of tension laced with disbelief. No species had ever spoken to the Supreme Chancellor in such a manner. Mercer stepped forward, his expression hard. You ask for time, but where was that patience when you bled our colonies dry? When you forced human businesses to operate under rigged trade laws, when you restricted our scientific research so that we would never catch up? Oroth Tai met Mercer's gaze, his expression unreadable. You misunderstand, Captain. The Union did not fear humanity's advancement. We feared what you might become if you advanced. The words hung in the air like a blade. There it was. The unspoken truth finally given voice. They had never doubted humanity's potential. They had feared it. Mercer's lips curled into a slow, knowing smirk. And now you realize your fears were justified. The room fell into stunned silence. The representative of the Oltari Dominion, a cold-blooded strategist whose species had thrived on political manipulation, leaned forward. If we agree to your demands, the Union will be admitting its past mistakes. That admission will weaken us politically. Mercer folded his arms. That's not my problem. The Oltari narrowed his eyes. You have the advantage now, human. But consider this, if we comply, the other empires will resent humanity's rise. You may not have to fight a war today, but in a decade, a century, there will always be those who seek to undermine you. Mercer chuckled, shaking his head. You think we don't know that? Humanity doesn't expect friendship from this union. We don't need it. What we need is what we've earned, control of our own destiny. And if that makes enemies out of you, so be it. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. Oroth Tai exhaled, looking around at his council. He could see it in their eyes, the calculations, the shifting priorities, the desperate search for a way out. But there was none. Humanity had backed them into a corner. He turned his gaze back to Mercer. What will it take to avoid war? Mercer's expression turned cold. Accept our terms, publicly. Not behind closed doors, not with empty agreements. We want it broadcast across every system in the Union. Let the galaxy see humanity take its place. A heavy silence settled over the chamber. The demand was devastating, not just in its political ramifications, but in what it symbolized. The Galactic Union had spent centuries ensuring humanity remained beneath them. Now, they were being forced to kneel before it. Oroth Tai closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he gave a slow, reluctant nod. The Galactic Union will convene an emergency session to vote on your demands. Mercer inclined his head slightly, a victorious glint in his eyes. "Make it quick, Chancellor. We're not known for our patience." With that, he turned on his heel and walked out of the chamber, his delegation following behind. The doors sealed behind him, leaving the most powerful leaders in the galaxy sitting in stunned, helpless silence. For the first time in history, the Galactic Union had been given an ultimatum, and they had no choice but to obey. The doors to the council chamber slid shut behind Captain Mercer, but he didn't allow himself to relax. Not yet. The corridors of the Galactic Union headquarters were eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos inside the chamber. Beside him, Admiral Lorna Hayes kept pace, her face impassive, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands hovered near her holster. "That went well," she muttered under her breath. Mercer smirked. "Depends on your definition of well." She shot him a sharp look. "They're going to stall. They'll delay, argue among themselves, find ways to water down the agreement. You know that, right?" Mercer nodded. "Of course, they think they still have time. They're wrong." Hayes exhaled, glancing down the corridor. "We should get back to the Titan. I don't trust these bastards not to try something desperate." Mercer was about to respond when his earpiece crackled to life. "Captain, this is Commander Reynolds aboard the Titan. We've got movement, multiple Union warships breaking formation. No weapons lock yet, but they're repositioning near the station's defense grid." Mercer's jaw tightened. He knew exactly what was happening. The Union Council was still arguing, but some factions weren't willing to wait. Someone had just decided to test humanity's resolve. "Understood, Commander," Mercer said calmly. "Keep shields at full readiness. If they so much as flinch in our direction, I want a full power-up sequence on the railguns. No shots fired unless I give the order." "Aye, Captain." Hayes cursed under her breath. "I knew it. They can't help themselves." Mercer turned down the next hallway, his pace quickening. "Let's not jump to conclusions. Maybe they're just positioning for security reasons." "Yeah," Hayes said flatly. "And maybe they think they can intimidate us into backing down." Mercer didn't answer. He was already considering the possibilities, weighing each potential response. The Union wasn't stupid. They wouldn't risk an all-out battle here, not with the Titan sitting in their backyard. But they didn't have to. A tragic accident, a miscommunication, a single shot fired in the wrong direction. That's all it would take to justify a preemptive strike. The Union was still arrogant enough to believe they could put humanity back in its place. He was about to prove them wrong. Inside the council chamber, Oroth Tai remained seated as the representatives around him dissolved into chaos. "This is madness," one of the Vranex generals snarled. "We should destroy their ship now before their threat spreads." "And risk total war?" a Zeltar diplomat hissed. "You saw how calm he was. He's not bluffing. We still don't know what else humanity has built." "The time to strike is now," the Vranex general roared. "We outnumber them 100 to 1. Enough." The chamber fell silent. Oroth Tai slowly rose to his feet, his luminous blue eyes scanning the room. He could feel the fear in the air, the uncertainty. Mercer's words had done more than just shake them. They had shattered the very foundation of the Union's authority. For centuries, the Council had dictated terms to weaker species. And now? Now, they were the ones being dictated to. Oroth Tai's voice was quiet, but it carried across the chamber with an undeniable weight. "If we fire first, we lose everything," the Vranex general scoffed. "You let fear guide you, Chancellor." Oroth Tai turned his piercing gaze on the warlord. "Number I let reality guide me. Humanity is no longer beneath us. They are not asking for war, but if we give it to them, we may not survive the outcome." The warlord opened his mouth to protest, but something in Oroth Tai's expression made him hesitate. The Supreme Chancellor exhaled slowly. "We vote. Now." The murmurs started again, but no one objected. This was the moment. Would the Galactic Union acknowledge humanity as an equal power, or would they force the war they had always feared? Outside, the Titan hovered in orbit, its guns silent but watching. Waiting. Humanity's patience was not infinite, and if the vote went the wrong way, the galaxy would soon learn exactly what that meant. Minutes stretched into an eternity as the Galactic Union Council cast their votes. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the automated tally system, displaying the results in real time. Mercer and Hayes had returned to the Titan, standing on the bridge as the broadcast played out across the galaxy. The vote wasn't just for the Union. It was for every species watching, every government wondering if humanity's rise would be acknowledged peacefully or through war. The tally ticked upward. Yes. Yes. Number, yes. Yes. Mercer watched without expression, but he could feel the tension behind him. The Titan's bridge crew barely moved, all eyes locked on the screen, and then the final vote was cast. 63% in favor. A low murmur swept through the council chamber as the Supreme Chancellor stood, his expression unreadable. "It is decided," Orothtai announced. "Humanity will be granted unrestricted autonomy over its own systems, free trade agreements, and technological parity within the Union. This decision is final." The chamber erupted. Some representatives stormed out, their faces twisted in fury. Others watched in stunned silence, as if they couldn't believe what had just happened. But Mercer wasn't focused on them. His attention was on the Union warships stationed near the defense grid, the ones that had moved too close to the Titan. Hayes exhaled. "They're not pulling back." Mercer activated his earpiece. "Reynolds, what's our status?" "Still holding position, Captain," Reynolds replied. "But the lead destroyer just powered up its targeting scanners. No weapons lock yet, but they're watching us." Mercer's jaw clenched. He turned his attention back to the screen, where Orothtai was still speaking. "The Galactic Union will make this declaration public across all member worlds," the Chancellor continued. "Humanity has earned its place among us, and we shall move forward, together." Then he turned his head slightly, as if listening to an incoming message. A subtle shift in his posture told Mercer everything. Orothai's voice hardened. "I now issue a direct command to all Union military forces. Stand down immediately. Any act of aggression against humanity following this vote will be considered treason against the Union itself." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the warships surrounding the Titan changed formation. Targeting scanners powered down. The destroyers began pulling back to their original positions. Mercer allowed himself a slow breath. "It's done," Hayes muttered. Mercer wasn't so sure. Far from the council chamber, in the shadows of a distant system, another meeting was taking place. The Vranex warlord who had opposed the vote sat across from the Oltari strategist, their expressions dark. "This is unacceptable," the warlord growled. "We have spent centuries ensuring humanity remained beneath us, and now, because of one ship, the council bends the knee?" The Oltari's yellow eyes gleamed. "The council is weak, but we are not." The warlord leaned forward. "Are you suggesting what I think you are?" The Oltari smiled. "The Union may have voted, but not all of us agree with their decision. There are other ways to put humanity back in its place. And I know exactly where to begin." The warlord rumbled in approval. "Then let's remind them why the galaxy fears us." On the Titan, Mercer watched the stars, knowing this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning.